What if we could learn from outstanding leaders in business, sports, and education from some of the best voices in corporate America? Lighting the Path is a series of interviews with industry leaders whose stories highlight strategies that build purpose-driven cultures, engage and retain top talent, develop drivers that create high-performance teams, and connect people to the vision of your company. Join us to hear from game-changing, talented leaders whose paths make a difference at work and at home.
When we talk about buy-in, it's one of my favorite subjects to talk about because you can't get buy-in without clarity.
Right.
And unfortunately, you can't get clarity without allowing for input. What happens is we think that talking increases clarity. And I know that you're a believer in this subject also, is that listening is more important to bring clarity than is talking, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another skill
Mm-hmm.
that we don't, especially in America, that's another skill that we do not really focus on. We hear about active listening and all these things, but the actual implementation of it, it goes a lot further than that surface level thinking and conversation that we typically have, where it's like, oh, are you really hearing the person? Are you really paying
Mm-hmm.
attention to what's being said? If you're really doing that, there's a standpoint of, all right, I heard you. Now let me tell you what I'm going to do to take that into account. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that's missing, especially now,
Yeah,
especially
very much
now.
so. I heard something recently that has been changing. It's changing the way that I approach a lot. It has to do with the fact that if I'm talking to you, if I'm thinking while you're speaking, I'm not listening.
Mhm.
Yeah, because what happens is I'm usually not thinking about what you're saying. I'm thinking about either something else or I'm thinking about where the next thing I'm going to say. But if I'm thinking while you're speaking, I'm really not present in that conversation. And that's a muscle that I think that we all need to look at being able to. Last night I had to use it in my conversation with my wife. We're in the kitchen talking, and she's telling me something, and I was thinking about what I wanted to talk to her about. And after a few minutes, she goes, "Are you listening to me?" And I'm going, "Well, yeah, no, I'm here." And I realized, no, I wasn't because I wasn't. I was thinking, and it's a tough mirror. And what I love about this is you and I teach this stuff. We have just as much of a problem with it as other people do, don't we?
Absolutely. That's why it's called a practice. Everything's a practice. Just like you said, you're not going for perfect. It's just progress. And significant others are great mirrors to see yourself through, right? Because they
Oh my
pay
God.
attention and they're
Oh my
like,
God. It's like I wouldn't be where I'm at without my wife. I know you feel the same way about yours. So,
yeah,
uh,
100%, man.
yeah.
And I feel like I love that you're saying that. And we talk about it in the coaching space all the time, right? Listening to understand versus listening to respond. And what
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about is listening to respond. You're already formulating what you're going to say. And you're already processed like, oh, you know what? Here's my argument, my counter argument. Oh, you know what? I just experienced that. And then you start going on a tangent in your mind. And then you
Mm-hmm.
forgot everything that was said. Whereas listening to understand, like you said, you're not formulating anything. You're processing, you're making mental notes about what was key for them,
Mm-hmm.
where you may need to ask for clarity, things like that. And it's a hard thing to actually do. Like we were talking about the implementation of all of these skills, it takes a lot of work because it's counterintuitive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what happens, this whole concept of empathetic leadership is I got to care as much about what you're thinking about and what you're feeling as what I'm thinking about and what I'm feeling. Right?
Mhm.
And so what happens is if I am not focused on that and being able to listen below the surface, because what I found is that as we're talking to people, what's really interesting is that a lot of times the key issue it doesn't show up until I've asked the third or fourth question.
Yep.
It's that first question comes out. It's not that they're trying to be superficial; they're trying to formulate their thoughts,
Yeah,
and
100%.
you know,
Yeah,
and it's being able
100%.
to sort of peel peel through there. Then, so when you think about because you mentioned something about here in the United States, you here in the United States, you actually have a somewhat of a global perspective because of military background and what you've seen or whatever. What are you seeing right now that, especially with the projects that Bright Mind Consulting is taking on, that are more what I call cross cultural issues that because we're dealing with with a workforce that is it's the workforce itself is diverse, right? And so the question is how effective are we as leaders leading people who are not like ourselves? And
Mm.
that's the part that we run into trouble, isn't it?
Absolutely. And there's several components to that. Last year, I was blessed to go to Saudi Arabia, Dubai, to do some work with an organization over there. And what I noticed is there's a couple of things here for cross cultural or cultural agility, as we like to call it. And one of the things is context. Right here in the States, we're very low context. We don't need to. We're very like say what you mean what you say. Right. But even we're not good at that because if you think about how people traditionally give feedback, it's sandwiched. So I'll be like, oh, good thing, bad thing, good thing.
We're trained to do that, by the
Yeah,
way.
we're
So
trained to do that. That's a horrible way to give feedback, by the way, everyone, right? Just say what you mean what you say. Bottom line up front, like we say in the military. And what that does to someone from another country is they will take the good because that's all they heard. Because in their country, they're more direct with it. They're like higher context. Like, hey, I want to like say what you mean what you say. So they were like, oh, that was the best feedback I ever received. They didn't hear the
Mhm.
negative part of what you
Yeah.
wanted to see. So that's where we're having this disconnect. So what I always recommend is asking people, like finding, identifying the people you're on your team or the people you're leading, identify their baselines. Like, how do they want to be given feedback? You can ask these questions literally in your one-on-ones. What's the best way to give you feedback if I notice that I want to see something improve? Because communication is not just, verbal. Some people are auditory, some people are tactile, some people need to read it. So you need to make sure you're getting them where they are first and foremost. The second thing is if they're from another country, you may want to study how they talk to one another. Because in the Middle East, they may say something that is not really what they meant. So if you say something in a different context, thinking that America is the only way or that's your only perspective, they may completely miss the message. So you have to ask and understand that, how you say it is not the only way to say something or convey a message. So ask for understanding. Is that did you get what I was saying, or do you need more context? Make sure and check in with them to make sure that they understand what you're saying.
Yeah, that's a
The other,
great point.
oh, go
Yeah.
ahead, go ahead.
No, that's a great point. That's one of some of the stuff that I work with people on is it's called the summary. Is this
Yep.
is what I heard you say, all right, and putting that on the table, um, because the trap I used to fall into is says it's like did you understand what I mean? Oh yeah, I understood that. Okay, good. Check the box, move on down the line, and they really didn't. I mean, they said yes, but they really
Exactly.
didn't. And so it has to do with coming in and being able to say, here's what, or asking them, all right, what did you understand was the message? Because I love what you're talking about is that the mental picture I have is an iceberg. Is that what happens above the waterline? You see about this much ice, and
Mm,
below the waterline is where the bulk of that monstrosity is. Well, that's kind of the way that's called contextual listening. If we're only listening to the stuff that's above the line, which are words being said, but we don't put the context that have to do with, like you and I, it's your background. That's why I wanted to talk to you because you have a unique perspective going through the challenge you had as a youth being incarcerated for, I said I was about to say a short time. You probably thought it was a lifetime while you were in there. But for that and military, just a unique perspective
mhm.
with but that's helped to kind of shape your mindset. And the more that we understand where that perspective comes from, the more impact that people and the more you feel connected to me if I understand where you're coming from.
Right, right. And that cultural agility, what you're talking about right there, Mike, happens here all the time. We think about it. We're one of the most diverse nations, and not just diverse from religion or race or any of that, but also from experiences.
Hmm.
If you think about it, like you said, we have completely different backgrounds. We arrived here completely different ways. So our experiences have shaped how we approach and how we perceive. And the greatest thing a leader can do is to pay attention to that. Like, hey, all right, we're approaching a problem two different ways because of our experiences, not just from an academic standpoint, but from what we've gone through in our lives. So that's why I always say the solution in a room does not have to be within that leader. But it's somewhere. Someone has it, but it may take that collaboration. And we have to be open to that to really get the most out of our team.
Well, I love that. I love that because I found that as a leader, I had to go through an adjustment, thinking that my value was me coming in and solving the problem, right? Me coming in and having the answer. And what I found through, I was going to say trial and error, no, just a lot of error. What I found was
Like most of
the
us.
yeah, that what happened was it was so much better whenever I walked in and said, "Here's a problem. I'm not sure what the answer. What do y'all think is?" And what was so cool is somebody would say something, and early on it goes, "Yeah, I was thinking the same thing," as opposed to saying when somebody would come up with an answer, going, "Wow, that's awesome," even though I had it. The fact that they brought it to the table goes back to something you said earlier, which was buy-in.
Hmm.
It's whenever somebody has a chance to contribute to the solution, they have more of a commitment than just complying to what's going on.
Absolutely. And the team sees that and they're like, oh, he's actually taking into account what I'm thinking. What I'm
Hmm.
saying is value. And it just makes everyone feel better. That psychological safety that is always talked about, right? It makes them all feel like I can share a standpoint. I won't be chastised or judged. It won't be shunned. It won't be pushed aside, but it will actually be considered. That
Yeah.
goes a long way. And another thing in a room with the why is even if you are the leader and you have to make a decision, letting people know why you have to make that decision without taking into account their perspectives and standpoints goes a long way too. Like, hey
Hmm.
team, right, we needed this decision. Sorry, I have to make this, and we have to go it this way because, right, and that because that's all a lot of times people are asking for. So
Hmm.
I'm seeing a lot of organizations go about layoffs and all these RTO policies and all that stuff just the completely wrong way.
Oh
Um,
God.
wrong way is yeah, you're seeing it too, right?
Oh God. I still remember when Radio Shack laid off 1,200 people, literally physically pink slips, right?
Yep.
Just boom, 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 boom,
Yep.
boom, boom. And then I forget which
Yeah.
one company that ended up reducing their headcount, 15% of their headcount with emails.
With emails. Exactly.
Yeah.
Today effectively is your last day. Like what?
That's right. You've been locked out.
Yeah,
I'm hitting
you've
my
been
keyboard.
locked
You've been
out. Your
locked out.
severance package would be in the mail, or you're getting email. Like that's insane. That is apathetic leadership.
You betcha.
That's
You
not
betcha.
caring about anything. And
Yeah.
so as leaders, I just recommend that those listening, whatever your situation is, and also I want people to know like leadership is not by title or role. We are all leaders because I like John Maxwell's definition. Leadership is influence. So we all
Hmm.
influence something in some way, shape, or form, but we have to understand that our decisions and our actions they have a ripple effect that take place. So that's why it's so important to consider others, and not just the people immediately in your circle. Your decisions are far reaching, and sometimes we don't even know how far reaching that decision can be. But just take that into account as you make a decision and don't take it lightly.
Hmm. Yeah, huge, huge. So I got a question for. I'm gonna last one. I mean, I knew I'd run into trouble. Wanted to spend a lot of time with you. Uh, but there's something I haven't exercised this with anybody else yet. There's something about our conversation I want to talk to you about the term psychological safety because we're hearing that a lot today's time. And I have to tell you honestly, when I first started seeing that term psychological safety, I felt like it was one of those gestalt terms. It was just one of those things that sounded good. What's the resonance behind it? It was just, psychological safety. I don't know. That's just the way that I responded to it. But the more that I've spent time on that subject in the last couple of months, I started recognizing in today's time, literally needs to be part of our leadership discussion of asking ourselves the question with our teams, are they experiencing psychological safety? Number one, from your perspective, because I know we're like minded on this, why is that an important subject?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, their perspective is their reality. So if they have a certain depiction of what's going on in their minds, then that's how they're going to operate and see everything through that lens. So that's number one why psychological safety is important. So if I feel like I'm in a toxic culture, the leader may think that the culture is phenomenal, but if I feel like I'm in a toxic culture, that's how I'm going to approach it. That's where that quiet quitting and all the other stuff that we've heard over this space comes in. That's where your top performers start to go downhill. That's where you're seeing employee retention being impacted, etc. Because I don't have a space in my mind where I feel that I'm valued, that I'm heard, that I'm empowered to do anything. And then that also, if you think about the top two things that matter for people in the workplace, that is meaningful work and recognition. Psychological safety encounters both of those.
Hmm.
Psychological safety means I feel like my work is valuable. I understand how it ties into the greater whole or the organization. I feel like there's growth opportunities. All these things come into play. And then recognition, yeah, benefits is one part, but that's not the only part, right? If someone says, good job, thank you for taking on this difficult project. I know there were a lot of bumps in the road, but I appreciate you taking action, taking account, and making sure we got to the finish line. That thank you goes a long way. So recognition comes into psychological safety, understanding that I am being seen. I'm not just a number. I'm not just employee 2-1-3-4. I'm
Hmm.
actually Jevon Wooden. So it does, and another component of that is my name being known, right? Does my manager take time to get to know who I am as a person, not just the task that I perform? Do they know that I have a family? Do they know that I have a kid? Do they know that I sometimes may need time off because I have a mental health challenge or a ailment, or I'm taking care of a parent? Those things are very important because then that leader can ask, "Hey, how's so and so? How's your kids doing? How's your family?" Right? That genuine relationship building goes a long way to creating a space where I feel like this is somewhere I can see myself for a long time. This is somewhere that I want to put my best foot forward. This is somewhere where I want to be a part of the solution that takes place, the innovation that takes place. All the things that we want as great organizations and leaders. It stems from that psychologically safe space.
Yeah, and I love that. That's why I'm so glad that I think it's a beautiful and wonderful definition of that term. And the reason why is because what you've just described is that somebody who feels what you've just experienced, what happens is we're going to get the extra out of that person. All right. We're not just going to get either just standards or even just somebody going through the motions or maybe not even going through the motions,
Mhm.
substandard performance. And the reason for that, you mentioned the word culture at the very beginning. And I want to use this to kind of bookend and come back to it because the research I did over the course of the last couple of years was on the subject of culture because I kept seeing that term and I started asking people, what's the definition of culture, the other leaders? And what I've come across the consistent message behind it is it's how people act in an organization and how people think or believe. And if that's the case, then psychological, the way we process things mentally, influences and comes out, metastasizes, if you will, in the way we think and what we believe. And that influences how we act. And so if we don't take that into consideration, we have a major problem with our companies. So, Joanne, thank you so much for your time and your perspective. If somebody wants to reach out to you, we'll drop this in the show notes, but what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me, Mike. It's been a pleasure, as I knew it would be. Always a great time having a conversation with you, man. So thank you for that. If people want to connect with me, they could go to JevonWooden.com. That's JEV as in Victor, ONWOODEN.com. Or you can hit me up on LinkedIn. Just search me. You'll see a light bulb by my name. Reach out. Let me know you heard me here first with my man, Mike Lejeune.
I love it then. And also make sure you check out his book, From Functional to Phenomenal, because Jevon, you walk the walk, my friend. You are phenomenal in the way you're impacting lives. So I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. That means a lot coming from you, man. Thank you so
Mhm.
much for that. I appreciate you.
Thanks for joining us today on Lighting the Path, Strategies for Tomorrow's Leaders. If anything in this podcast speaks to you, if I've challenged you, or if you want to spend time digging into this subject a little deeper, or if you disagree with me, reach out. My contact information is on our website, lightingthepath.net, or email me at mike@mikelejeune.com. Also, look for me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect our networks. Keep lighting the path for those who choose to follow you. It's more than a responsibility, it's an honor.